I've mentioned that you can't change the size, and there is now a requirement to give more disclosure on related parties and post-balance sheet events. And there is a mandatory exemption from consolidation for small undertakings. So I think that is quite, as far as SMPs are concerned and SMEs, I think that directive will have quite an impact on how financial reporting develops. And within this new directive, they are going to bring in the proposals within the microsphere that, as I said, had just had the second reading. So as far as audit policy is concerned, we know what Commissioner Barnier is saying. I think this was important right from the outset. These were the five keys. This was the five key areas of focus for the European Commission. The first one, as Goran mentioned, clarifying the scope and role of audit and the auditors. I don't think that that's been fully addressed within these proposals. I think there's more debate to take place. I think the role of IFAC is particularly important in that area. There's definitely a focus on strengthening auditor independence. When you read through the directive and through the regulation, it's independence, 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 both with regard to the auditors, with regard to the audit committees, etc., etc. The increase in the choice of auditors for clients, I think there's been far too much focus on the structure of the market and not on the other aspect of clarifying the scope and role of audit and auditors. And that's because the firms clearly have an interest, a very strong market interest in the structure of the market. And that's where a lot of the debate has been. And I'll touch on international cooperation and oversight. But as has been said, most of this is for public interest entities, but there are, when you do get into the directive, it does have some quite significant implications for SMEs and for the professional bodies. So free ownership we've touched on, mutual recognition of qualifications, more harmonisation of aptitude tests. We're not sure yet, and there is going to be a 3-year period when you can come to a country and practice under supervision and then be eligible to practice in, for example, in Italy. We're not sure yet from the wording within the directive whether your test has to be in Italian or whether it can be any other language. Certainly the leaked proposals indicated it could be any other language, which is an interesting concept. But you do have to understand laws and regulations. ISAs and ISQC1 is important, and we should make sure that people are aware that from my reading of the directive, this is for all entities, all sizes of audit, and that is important because the likes of Germany, France, Spain, for example, could not introduce or were not going to introduce ISAs at national level. They were adapting their own standards to be ISA compliant, but now will have ISAs throughout Europe. I think inspections and oversight is particularly important for professional institutes, but also for firms, because the publication of individual audit firm inspection reports will be available. It's very specific within the regulation and directive that is going to be the case. So it will not be just on a sector basis, it's by individual report. Practitioners, there will be no practitioners within the governance of oversight system. Richard mentioned about competent authorities. They will have sole responsibility for inspection of audit firms, irrespective of size. In many jurisdictions, it's only the public interest entity, those dealing with public interest entities, that are subject to review by competent authorities, and local institutes get involved in the smaller practitioners. That will not be the case, because the only delegated power that the competent authorities will have is with regard to approval and registration of auditors. And my concern is we will move from a professional environment into a regulated industry environment. And I think that there's potential there for behavioural change for practitioners. Because I think that being a member of an institute has strong implications as far as the individual concerns. And if you take that away, I think that that could be detrimental to the way practitioners behave. Medium-sized entities, I don't think there's anything I need to add to what has already been said on medium-sized entities. Just learning through on small. The concept of limited review is interesting. Member states can now set, or will be able to set, and these are proposals, it's got to go through Parliament and the Council of Ministers, which could take years. But there is now member state ability to set rules on limited review, and that will be interesting to see how that develops and where that fits in relation to audits and the work that IAASB are currently working on. And it does actually give a definition of limited review, and it is interesting. It will provide a lower level of assurance than audit. And as Richard Fleck mentioned, an audit is an audit, and is this the thin end of the wedge with regard to moving away from that content. I think I've covered most of that. It's there to be seen. What we've found is when thresholds are imposed, there is little appetite by clients to have voluntary audits. And we do have the whole spectrum. We have a large number of countries that do have the full thresholds. And we have then the likes of Cyprus and Malta, where there is no threshold at all. Every single company has an audit. That's primarily because you have to have audited financial statements to lodge with your tax returns. And so that really does drive, nil thresholds. And for those not requiring an audit, we've heard about IAASB's current work on compilation and review. We've got to, if we do go to limited review or IAASB's standards on review, there has to be seen in the marketplace a value for this service. There is a value there that people recognize with regard to audit. I think going forward for SMPs and SMEs, there has to be a value on that additional that additional service that will be provided. Otherwise, it won't be taken up. And the providers of finance will have to accept, if it's going to have traction, the providers of finance will have to see value in that assurance service, because at the moment the question is, are those financial statements audited? Tick, that impacts on the cost of funds. If there's no tick, it doesn't. And so therefore it is important that those services do have a focus, or those providers do have a focus on that service. And will the profession change as a consequence of all these proposals? And I think that there is a question that may be the case. So I will conclude with that slide, which shows you what is happening in the profession and the extent of change, as well as so it's volume and pace. But I am happy to conclude, but say that there are many challenges ahead, but there are also many opportunities. Thank you.